It started on a Monday, Memorial Day, to be exact. I woke up early, the way I always did on days that meant something. Even after retiring from active duty 5 years ago. Old habits stuck. I brewed my coffee black, walked out in my robe, and raised the American flag on the pole bolted just beneath our second-story window. It was a tradition not just mine, but my father's, and his father's before him. I had served a tour in Afghanistan, lost friends, lost parts of myself I'd never get back, but I still had the flag. It reminded me of sacrifice, honor, unity, things that sometimes felt like they were disappearing in this country. I didn't expect to be punished for it. 2 days later, a plain white envelope was tucked awkwardly in my mailbox. No stamp, no personalization, just a return address, Willow Pines Homeowners Association. I didn't think much of it, maybe a neighborhood event flyer or a pool cleaning schedule. But inside was a typed letter on HOA letterhead, with a red stamped notice across the bottom. Violation #FP108, unauthorized flagpole installation and exterior deck or breach. Fine, $250. Correction deadline, 10 business days. My hand trembled. I had to reread it 3 times. A fine, for a flag. I flipped through the HOA handbook that night. I hadn't looked at it in years, maybe since we bought the place. Sure enough, buried deep in Section 3, Paragraph 12.6, 4, no exterior decorative items or fixtures, including but not limited to flags, poles, seasonal lighting, or signage, may be displayed without prior written approval from the HOA committee to ensure community visual uniformity. It didn't specifically ban flags, but it required approval, which I didn't have. Still, wasn't there a federal law about this? Something about protecting the right to fly the American flag. I did a quick search. There it was, the Freedom to Display the American Flag Act of 2005. It stated that no HOA or condo association could restrict the display of the U.S. flag within reasonable limits. But what was reasonable, and did Willow Pines care? I called the HOA number listed on the letter the next morning. A receptionist answered politely, transferring me to someone named Bradley, who introduced himself as the Exterior Aesthetics Enforcement Coordinator. He sounded young and smug. "Mr. Carson, I'm sure you understand," he began. "This isn't about the flag itself, it's about consistency. If everyone starts adding personal touches to their homes, the neighborhood aesthetic suffers." "This isn't political," I replied. "It's not personal either. It's patriotic, and it's my right," he sighed. "Sir, we're not saying you can't fly the flag. You just need to submit the request form and wait for approval. Once it's processed through the quarterly DAKE or board, you can reapply." "Quarterly?" I snapped. "So I can fly the flag in what, August?" Bradley didn't answer. The line went quiet. "Then, that's the process. Click." I could have let it go, pay the fine, taken down the pole. But I didn't deserve my country so I could get bullied by a group of clipboard warriors in khakis. Instead, I did something else. I printed out copies of the Flag Act, stapled them to every HOA-approved mailbox on our street, and highlighted the section on federal protection. Then I added a sticky note. "Is this what we've become? Fining veterans for patriotism?" Mike Carson, house number 114. That night, my flag stayed up, and by morning, 2 more appeared. House number 109, and house number 117, then house number 103. It had begun. By the end of the week, at least 9 houses on Willow Pines Lane were flying the American flag. Not all of them had served. Some were retired teachers, nurses, or young parents. But that wasn't the point. The point was unity. A quiet stand against the absurdity of a fine for showing respect to the country we all lived in. I thought maybe, just maybe, the HOA would back down. I was wrong. The next envelope didn't come in the mailbox. It came taped to my door. Bright yellow paper, all caps. HOA seal stamped in red. Second notice violation escalation you have failed to comply with correction notice, #FP-108. Failure to remove unauthorized flag display and pole fixture by the deadline will result in a daily $50 fine and possible legal action, per Willow Pines HOA bylaws. Bradley Timmons, Exterior Aesthetics Enforcement Coordinator. Legal action over a flag. It didn't say unauthorized flag. It said unauthorized display, like it was some graffiti. Like it was offensive. They were trying to make an example of me. I took a photo of the notice and posted it to the local community Facebook group with the caption, "I fought for that flag. Now I'm being fined daily for flying it." Is this the America we live in? Within an hour, it had 140 likes and dozens of comments. Within a day, it had over 1,000 shares across town. People were angry furious. Even veterans groups started tagging the HOA. Local reporters asked for interviews, and someone posted the HOA president's contact info with the words, "Tell her what you think about finding disabled vets on Memorial Day." I received a DM from a woman I didn't know. Her son was currently deployed. "I'll be putting up a flag today too. Let them come find me." 3 days later, the HOA called an emergency member meeting at the clubhouse. I showed up wearing my old army jacket. Bradley was there, flanked by 2 other board members. Behind them, a slideshow screen showed violation trends and non-compliance metrics. I wasn't the only one they targeted. They tried to frame it as a decorative standards issue, but when the floor opened to comments, things got heated fast. A man named Jorge stood up. He was a school janitor, not a veteran. "You fined me for my porch lights last year." Said they were off-tone. "You fined my neighbor for planting marigolds. Now you're fining this man for a flag." Then came Mrs. Carter, an elderly widow. "My husband died in Korea. That flag was folded and given to me at his funeral. If you think I won't hang it on my own porch, you can try to stop me." They tried to gavel the crowd down. It didn't work. I didn't know someone had tipped off the local news station until I saw the camera van parked outside my house that evening. Channel 8's local anchor, Danielle Morgan, was standing on my lawn with a microphone. A veteran fined for flying the American flag on Memorial Day. In Willow Pines, that's exactly what happened. Tonight, we speak with Mike Carson about why his small stand turned into a neighborhood movement. I told the story, straight and simple. I didn't beg for sympathy. I didn't curse the HOA. I just told the truth. And I ended with one sentence. This isn't about a flagpole. It's about what we're allowed to stand for in our own homes. That night, after the 6 p.m. news aired, something incredible happened. First it was just the family next door, then the house across the street, then 2 more. By morning, nearly 70% of homes in the neighborhood were flying a flag. Flags in windows, flags on porches. One guy even had a huge banner hanging from his garage with the words, "Patriotism is not a violation," and mine, still standing. But the next fine notice wasn't just for me anymore. The HOA had just picked a fight with the entire street. The HOA must have thought we'd all back down once the media circus died out. But the circus didn't die. If anything, it got bigger. By Friday, a second news crew had shown up from a national network this time. They parked a satellite truck at the corner of Willow Pines and Harvest Lane and stayed there for 3 days. Kids rode their bikes past it like it was a spaceship. They weren't just here for me anymore. They were here for the story, the little neighborhood where people stood up. And that attention brought legal firepower. It was Saturday afternoon when a silver Lexus pulled up in front of my house. A tall man in a navy suit stepped out and walked up my driveway with a leather briefcase in hand. "Mr. Carson," he asked, extending his hand. "Name's Adam Levy. I'm with the American Civil Liberties Law Center." I blinked. "The what?" He smiled. "We represent citizens whose basic rights have been challenged by overreaching authorities. We saw your story on the news and ... well, I'd like to help. Pro bono." I didn't know what to say. I'd never had a lawyer offer me anything in my life, let alone one with a national track record. Adam opened his case and pulled out a folder. The Flag Code of 2005 explicitly protects private citizens from any HOA rule that interferes with the respectful display of the American flag. Your HOA is in violation of federal statute. Then he said something that sent a chill up my spine in a good way. And if they don't rescind every fine, we'll see them in court. The next day, Adam sent a formal cease and desist letter to the HOA board, along with a printed copy of the federal law, media coverage, and a notarized statement from me. It also contained this line: failure to comply within 72 hours will result in a federal injunction and class action litigation involving every affected homeowner. The HOA board went dark. No emails, no calls, not even a newsletter. But by Monday morning, a new message appeared in every mailbox, stamped in bold red: urgent HOA announcement, emergency rule review. The letter said a special meeting would be held to reevaluate the flag display policy and address ongoing community concerns. No apology, no retraction, just fear. They were folding, slowly, but folding. Flags weren't the only thing popping up now. One house painted red, white, and blue flower pots. Another had lawn signs that read, "Patriotism is not a policy violation." Kids sold lemonade with stars and stripes cups, donating profits to a veterans charity. Even the local fire chief drove by with a small American flag on his side mirror and gave me a silent salute. But not everyone was on our side. Some board members doubled down. A man named Stan Whitaker, the HOA vice president, posted a public rant on Nextdoor, calling me a rabble-rouser exploiting veteranship to manipulate public sympathy. He claimed we were inciting division and disrespecting process. One neighbor, Mr. Langston, took down his flag and whispered, "I just can't afford the fines. Mike, I've got a kid in college." I didn't blame him. Not everyone could fight this war. Wednesday morning, it happened. I got a call from my cousin in Texas. "Mike, you're on CNN right now." They were airing a segment called HOA versus Hero, the flag fight in Willow Pines. There was footage of my house, the rampaging flag movement, the lawyer interviews. They even ran a split-screen debate with a former HOA president and a constitutional law expert. It was surreal. My phone didn't stop ringing for 2 days. I had messages from strangers in Ohio, Arizona, even Alaska. One said, "My HOA banned Christmas decorations last year. You just inspired us to fight back." That Friday, the HOA meeting room was packed to capacity. TV crews weren't allowed in, but homeowners filled every seat, standing room, even windows. The board sat stone-faced at the front. Bradley, Stan, and President Loren Willoughby, who hadn't spoken publicly since this all began. Loren stood up and tapped the mic. In light of recent public discourse, legal advisement, and community sentiment, the Willow Pines HOA hereby suspends violation #FP-108 and all related fines. A wave of gasps and scattered claps erupted through the crowd. But Loren wasn't finished. Furthermore, the HOA will revise its exterior decor policy to permit American flag displays, so long as they're safely mounted and maintained. People stood up. They clapped, some cried, and for the first time in weeks, I exhaled. The day after the HOA officially backed down, I didn't take the flag down, I added another one. A smaller flag, tucked just above the flower bed, beside a hand-painted wooden sign that said, "Home of the Free, because of the Brave." By the weekend, dozens of neighbors had done the same. Some kept it simple, just a porch flag and a porch light. Others went full red, white, and blue. Bunting, banners, even flag-themed mailbox covers. The street had become something else, something beautiful. And my house, well, it became a symbol. It started with a trickle. A family drove by and slowed down in front of my home, rolled down their window, and snapped a photo. Then another car came. Then two. By the next weekend, there were dozens of parents pointing out my front yard to their kids like it was a monument. One woman stopped and knocked on my door. Her husband had died in Iraq in 2009. She said, "My son's learning about civics. I brought him here so he could see what standing up actually looks like." I didn't know what to say. I offered them water, and I just sat on the porch with them for a while. Sometimes silence speaks louder than speeches. One Tuesday afternoon, I got an official-looking envelope in the mail. Not from the HOA, from Congressman Dale Wexler's office. Inside was a formal invitation. You are hereby invited to be recognized during the 4th of July Veterans Tribute Ceremony, held at the Capitol Courtyard. They wanted me to speak. Me, a guy who'd been fined for flying a flag. Now I was being asked to talk about freedom in front of hundreds, maybe thousands. I stood at the podium that day. Nervous but firm, I said. Some people think freedom is fireworks and picnics. But freedom is also being able to raise a flag in your front yard without fear. Freedom is your neighbors standing beside you when no one else will. Freedom is quiet at first and then it roars. The crowd roared with it. One evening in late August, a local artist left something on my doorstep, a framed painting of my house, not just the flag, but the kids selling lemonade, the news van, the crowd outside the HOA meeting hall. All captured in a kind of nostalgic Americana glow. At the bottom, she painted these words in gold script, "The house that stood." I cried. It was the first time I cried since my friend Reggie didn't to come home from Kandahar. The HOA sent out a final letter in September. They weren't just walking back the flag rule, they were rewriting the handbook entirely. With homeowner input, open meetings, a new clause was added. Residents of Willow Pines retain the right to respectfully display any flag representative of national, cultural, or community heritage, without prior board approval, provided it does not obstruct public safety or violate federal law. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. And best of all, Bradley resigned. Stan followed 2 weeks later. In their place, we elected Mrs. Carter, the widow of a Korean War vet, who once said she'd hang her folded flag on her porch, with or without permission. By the time fall arrived, my mailbox was overflowing. Letters, postcards, flags, from all 50 states. People told me their own HOA horror stories about Christmas lights, lawn gnomes, wine chimes, even a girl's lemonade stand getting shut down for being commercial activity. But more than that, they told me they felt seen. They weren't alone anymore. Even small resistance could lead to big change. I had a new sign installed next to my front door. Just a small wooden plaque that reads, "Welcome to Freedom House, Est, 2025. People stopped to take photos next to it. A teacher told me she uses my story in her civics class. A veteran from Missouri brought his son here, just to see it with his own eyes. It's no longer just my house. It's a landmark. Not because it's fancy, but because it stood, because we stood together."